Okay, hello everybody. Hope everybody's alright today on this beautiful sunny day. It's lovely to have a little bit of heat rather than a bit of snow.
Absolutely.
Today we're going to be doing a long low cascade arrangement to go on a top table for a wedding. These arrangements can go for different ideas. You can have non-trailing ones, which are just a nice centrepiece, or the trailing ones do look quite nice if you'd like to make a bit of a feature of your table. I've got a really lovely selection of flowers, as you can see on the side here. We've gone for a pale pink and cream sort of theme this time round. And I'll just get straight ahead, I think. So I've gone for a single block spray tray, and I've soaked my piece of Oasis, and I've just taken off, just pour the water out. You can see that I've just cut off a little bit off the end there, just so that there's a little bit of gap in the tray, just so that your water can have a little bit of area to go into. It's probably I always find it's better to do that than have it all the way to the end, because the water then will try and come out of the dish, whereas this way it will sit in the dish. And then I've just used the anchor tape there, just to go twice across the middle and then once all the way down the length, just to make it nice and secure. So I'll give it a little earthquake test. That isn't going to come out of there. So to start with, I've got a little bit of the palm leaf. I'm going to use the palm to give you that nice trail over the front there. That lends itself quite nicely just a trail, so that's probably the perfect thing to use there. I'm going to start with the middle, like so. And then I'm going to pop a couple just in either side, so one there and one there, slightly bring it up as you go to give you a nice shape. And stripping off any of the leaves that are going to be in the Oasis. So you don't want to put too many leaves in there because it will start to make quite large holes. And I'll pop one that side.
So when you're making up cascading arrangements or long and low, are you restricted to foliage, or is there quite a lot of foliage that you can use?
There is quite a lot of foliages you can use because you're putting it into the Oasis. They will carry on drinking, so it doesn't matter too much about being out of water. Anything really for a long low. Eucalyptus always looks really nice, depending on what flowers you're choosing. So I tend to go with the colours and what sort of flowers we've gone for, and then I sort of choose some foliage that will match in with the flowers. So for this one, we've gone for similar sort of greens. But if you wanted more of a vintage sort of look, I'd probably suggest to go for some of the eucalyptus, because it's got that greyish look to it. It tones really nicely with the creams and the pinks. But yeah, anything you fancy really. It depends what sort of look you're going for. If you wanted quite a structured look, then you're probably best to go for more structured foliage like your hard Ruscus and things like that. But if you'd like a bit more of a free-flowing look, then these sort of foliages I'd probably suggest to go for really. I'm just going to pop a couple in the ends just to give you length. I like to make sure they're nice and even as well. And you can use your little bits that you've cut off the bottom as a bit of an infill, so you don't waste any. So you can see that I've got the shape there. I'll probably pop a couple, just one there and one there to fill in the gaps. You want to make sure that your stems aren't too long as well when you're popping them into this sort of arrangement, because you don't want them to go all the way through the Oasis and come out to the back, because they won't be able to drink. I always tend to have a little measure and just make sure I cut just enough so it goes into the Oasis, but not too much so it comes out the other side. Just another little tip. Like I say, I use all the extra little bits that you've cut off just to fill in the top, like so. And then next I'm going to go for the soft Ruscus, which again has that lovely curve to it. It's very free flowing. It lends itself quite nicely to this sort of arrangement. It's nice to have different textures as well, just to give it a little bit of difference when you're looking at it, and that helps the flowers stand out as well, I believe. Gives them a nice frame to sit back on. You can see that I tend to go quite symmetrical when I do my arrangements. I like everything to be fairly even each side. Like so. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I don't tend to green up everything to start with, because you need to leave enough oasis for your stems to go in, and your flowers are more important, so you want to make sure that there's plenty of oasis left for those to go in. So I tend to green up to about that point, so you've still got quite a bit of gap there. And then what I'm going to do is pop all my flower in, and then after that I'll come back and finish filling in with some more foliage, just to fill up any gaps or anything. But if you're using anything like spring flowers or anything like that, that's a really good idea not to overfill your arrangement with the foliage first. Things like tulips and daffodils have really soft stems, so you'll find that if you compact it too much with your foliage, you won't have any space for your sort of sappy stems to get into. Another little tip. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with this lovely Avalanche Rose. Nice cream colour, that one. And what I tend to do as well is I always take the guard petals off, which are the ones that look a little bit untidy. They are there just to protect the inner. So you'll find that the inside of the rose is a lot neater and a lot crisper, like so. But they just have the guard petals on there so that when they're transported or anything like that, you don't end up bashing the more delicate petals in the middle.
There's some people that prefer to leave the guard petals on, don't they?
Yeah, it's definitely personal preference, I think, on that one. I just think they look a lot neater without them. But then some roses, depending on what they are, if you've gone for a very sort of gardeny rose with a garden look, actually I think they're a lot nicer to have the guard petals on, because they look a bit more natural then. It's just really personal preference. And I always cut my stems at a good angle as well, if you can see that there, just to make sure there's a lot of surface area open, so there's more chance of it getting a lot more water. You can always save your rose petals as well, the nicer ones that aren't too bruised. You can always save those, and you can put them as confetti or put them on the table as a nice decoration, or if you've got a little flower girl that like to sprinkle some petals down the aisle, that sort of thing. It's always good to think about those sort of things, so get the most out of your flowers. So like I said before, I tend to go very symmetrical, and I tend to work with one flower at a time. So I've gone for the Avalanche Rose to start with on this one, and then you'll find that I'll go through each individual rose or the colours or types of flowers. Some people tend to go for the look, so where they want their placement, they'll start with a line or start with the edging or anything like that. But I think you just get used to how you do it, a bit of a recipe as such. and then just go from there really. I try and work roughly, so if you were to split it down the middle, there'd be mirrored image each side. Sometimes your centre's a little bit different because you tend to stagger the centre, but if I put one this side, I'll make sure I put one that side, just so that it's even. So when you look at it, it doesn't look heavy on one side and then lighter on the other. You get a free flow all the way through then.
We're just currently working with the Rose Avalanche, which is an ivory cream rose. The colour is quite subjective, but it's a really popular rose for wedding flowers. It's just a lovely sized bloom, really large and blousy, as you can see. We're also using today, which Nat will show you in a moment or so, we're using the Sweet Avalanche, which is a lovely blush pink rose. And we're using, is that lovely?
I've got Faith there.
Oh, and we're using Faith, which is a lovely dusky pink rose, really similar to the one we used last week, which was Lovelace. So nice in action there. Do you cover the back, the little bottom, with just foliage, or do you take the flowers round the back?
Normally it depends what you've got. So if I'm using something that's going to have, say, chrysanthemums, I tend to put some of those at the back. I always cover it with foliage, no matter what. There's always a foliage to cover at the back there. But I normally try and do something, so like your roses and things are very important to see from the front. So if there's something that is a little bit less expensive, like I said, like the chrysanthemum or something like that, I tend to put those in the back. For this case, I'd probably just put a little selection of the spray roses just in the back there, just to give it a little bit of colour, but you're not taking too much of your flower value to the back then, it's mainly all at the front. But yeah, I would definitely do foliage on the back no matter what.
What is your method of placement, as in lines and height, and knowing your stem count?
Okay, so with lines, I tend to try and make my foliage exactly how you want it. I always find that the foliage has got to be the most important thing. So if you make your base too small with your foliage, then you'll find that the overall arrangement will be too small. That's one thing that I always struggled with when I was first learning about floristry. I found that I made the greenery far too small, and then I brought the flowers really in tight to match the greenery, and then you'd end up with a lot smaller arrangement overall. So I personally tend to try and keep my foliage out further, because you can always trim it. So if you find at the end you think, oh God, I've got a bit wild on my foliage, you can trim that back. But with your flowers, once you've cut them, you can't put the stem back on. So that's the sort of thing I find overall with the arrangement for line. As long as you get your foliage right to start with, you'll find that your arrangement will go a lot nicer. And again, I've gone for the Avalanche Rose because that's the one I've got the most of. So with that, I've used to make your shape all the way around, so you get a good frame as such with your roses. And then I've gone, like I said before, I tend to do everything very symmetrical. So I think we've gone for 12 roses there. Yeah, 12 roses there. So you'll find that I tend to go certain numbers, which will keep, the more you make, the easier it gets with when it comes to stem counts and things like that. So I've started off with my overall price, and then just worked out how many I can have within that price. But sometimes they teach you to do like the S down the middle for your arrangement, or tend to stick with lines across the middle that way. But I tend to do a bit of both really.
Yeah.
Just depends what I'm using, how it looks, you know, the size, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so
there's lots of varying factors that come into it.
Yeah, but as long as you know, as long as you practice all the ways, you'll just find one that is more suited to you, really. But if I'm using things like spray carnations, if I've got anything like that in an arrangement, I always use the spray carnations first, and I'll always go round the edge like I've done with the roses here, and then do a few in the middle, just to give you that real solid outline. Spray carnations are really good for that, just to give you a bit of definition, and then everything else is just sort of filling in, complementing the space. I hope that helps. Right, now I'm going to go on to the Faith Rose. So I've only got 3 of these ones, so I think I'll probably just fill in there and maybe there. You can move fingers around slightly. Sometimes I find once I start moving other bits, I think that might look nicer somewhere a bit different, as long as you don't keep taking them out and putting them back in, because you'll find that you'll end up with a few holes, and you want them to be nice and secure in there. There we go. And then I've got 3 of the Sweet Avalanche. So it's exactly the same as your normal Avalanche, it's just that it's pink. So it's the same head size and the same sort of look to it, very blousy. And again, I'm going to take the guard petals off those ones. Right. So I'm going to put that one in that side to balance up the colour. Just there. And I think the other 2, I'm going to pop one in this side and one in that side, just to bring the colour all the way through then. The more of the stem you can get into the oasis, the better, because it will give it a lot more of an anchor support, and then it will be able to drink a lot better as well. I'm just going to pop that one in that side, just to match. Just have a little bit of a change around there.
So as you go along, you can edit.
You can, yeah. Like I said before, just make sure you don't move too many things, because you'll end up with a few extra gaps. But you'll find that as you put other things in, you'll think, oh no, that one doesn't look quite right there, or you'll have a couple too close together. And things like that. So you can be a little bit choosy with where you pop them, and you can rearrange a little bit. That isn't too much of a problem, but it's just being confident to take them out and reposition them, and not be afraid of them, really, I think, as well.
Yeah, you don't put it back in the same
in the
slot you
oh
put it
no
previously.
no yeah, if you've taken it out of a slot where you've left the hole, try not to put it back in that one, because it just will make the hole bigger, and you'll find that when you deliver it and when you're moving it around, they'll slightly bounce up and down as you move the flowers, and then that will make the hole bigger and bigger, and eventually it will fall out. So the less holes you can make, the better, really. Okay, so next I think I'm going to go for the Bouvardia, which is one of my favourites. I do quite like that. Comes in a lovely selection of colours.
It's a very pretty flower, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So with the Bouvardia, I'll just have a little look from the front. I'm just going to place some in the gaps just to complement the roses. It's got really lovely dark green foliage on there as well, which is very nice. Adds a little something different to the arrangement. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 5 of those. I think I'm going to pop another one in the bottom there. So I've gone a little bit deeper as well with these ones, just to give it a little bit of recession. Again, something else that's quite a personal preference. Some people like doing the recession, some people don't. Just depends what sort of look you'd like to go for. And then I'm going to pop a couple out to the sides. Okay, and then what we've got left is the lovely spray roses. Very pretty. Okay, so I've only got 3 of those. So what I'm going to do, like I said before, I'm probably just going to take probably 3 of the little breaks just off there. So I've got 3 individual little ones like that, and then when I finish the back, I'll probably just slot those just in the back, so you've got a nice little bit of colour like that just out of the back there, but you're not taking the really large heads then, so you've still got all the beauty of the roses right at the front there. Okay, I'm just going to come across to this side just to get a different view. Right, for the spray roses, I think I'm going to pop those just in here and in there. Can't find the oasis now. It's in there somewhere. There we go. So that you see there, I've gone for the Bouvardia there, and then I've just popped it in the little gap in the middle.
Yeah. Works well as a filler flower, the spray roses.
Definitely. Just come back that side. Then the last one I'm going to cut down a little bit, so I've got a bit to pop each side in between the roses at the top there, just so you bring the colour all the way through. so. And like I said at the beginning, you can also go back now and pop in any more foliage that you think needs to go in anywhere, just to fill out. Now you've got all your stems in there, it's a little bit easier to see where you've got a few gaps or where it'd look nice to have a little bit of extra something.
So then at this stage, do you do the back?
So I'll probably fill in the front first, and then go on to the back. Again, you don't want to concentrate too much on the back and then find out that you've actually used all the foliage that you've costed in, and then you've actually got nothing left for the front to make it look lovely at the front. So I do tend to concentrate more on the front first, and then go to the back.
And height that you keep to?
The way I personally do it is, I think if you work, I mean, I always do it this sort of height. It's hard to say how high that is, but I always think if they're sitting at the table, they're going to be on a chair, so you don't want it any higher than sort of chest height, because if you have it up too high, they're not going to be able to see anybody. So I always try and keep it quite low. So if you're a little bit not sure on how tall that is, just give it a try. Put it on a table and sit as if you would be on a chair, and if you can see over the top, I'd say that's perfect.
Yeah. Is there any proportion that you stick to? So, for instance, if you did a vase arrangement, you'd do...
Yeah, you normally do your
levels.
thirds to 2/3.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So for example, this one, I've gone about that far over the top of the oasis. So that's what...
So that's the chunk of the oasis.
Yeah, about the size of your oasis again then, really. Yeah. I wouldn't come up any taller than that. Because you'll find like with your proportions, if you go taller, you'll find you have to go a bit longer as well. Otherwise, you'll look really tall but really short.
Yeah.
So, and again with the length as well, if you went taller, you'd probably find that you'd need to come out a lot further to make it look more in proportion. So, yeah.
Brilliant.
I hope that helps.